Alright guys, in this vehicle specific video, we're going to be doing a 2017 Dodge Challenger. We're going to be doing all the side windows and the rear window. The first step we're going to do is trick the door, or trick the latch, since it is a frameless window and the window does move up and down when you open and close the door. Let's do that. Whenever I trick the latch, I like to lock the door, so that way it can't be untricked accidentally. And we'll go ahead with the outside prep, inside prep, and then we'll start laying the material out. Go ahead and lay the dryer sheet on the back window. You'll notice that this back window has a sticker on it, so you guys will be able to see how I shrink the back window with a sticker like that on the glass. It's not that big of an issue. And then we'll continue with the inside prep, just like any other vehicle. All right, we're going to go ahead and lay the bulk material out. He's getting 5% on the back windows and 20% on the two fronts. So let's lay out the 20% on the front door, and then we'll lay out the back window. All right, so you can see I finally have a 20-inch roll, typically using a 40-inch roll. So you guys will be able to see me rolling out the 20-inch roll compared to the big 40-inch. Much easier. Now I would typically use this top corner here, the excess material, for the quarter glass window, but since he's doing 5% on the back, I'm gonna have to use a separate piece for that. So with this car, we'll line up the bottom edge. We'll first cut off the excess material to make it easier to handle. Line up that bottom edge, cut the front edge. Now when you cut the front edge, you're only going to want to cut up to this point here. You don't want to go past that and cut that piece yet. So just up right before the bend happens. Then we're going to shift it forward about 1/8 of an inch. Keep the bottom lined up. Mount the back edge down and cut the back. Then we're going to release that mount, and we're going to shift it forward so that there's a slight gap on the back edge, keeping the bottom edge lined up. And what we're going to do here is the inside gasket is about 1/4 inch higher on the inside than it is on the outside, so we're able to shift this material up slightly and leave about 1/8 of an inch gap on the bottom. You don't want to be 1/8 of an inch above the inside gasket. You want to be 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the outside gasket. This makes installation a lot easier, since there is a lot more gasket on the inside. If you look on the inside here, you can see that the gasket is a lot higher. So get that 1/8 of an inch on the bottom. Make sure the gap on the back edge is consistent from top to bottom. So once you have an even gap across the bottom and a consistent, very slight hairline gap across the back, we'll go ahead and mount it across the top, and then we'll cut our top edge. Then we can pull the film off and clean up the edges and the corners. So we have our top rear, our bottom rear, our top front, and bottom front. So the top rear we're going to round out nice and tight, just like it is on the factory edge of the glass. And then the front top edge, we're going to kind of wrap this forward and just keep that nice and clean. The whole idea here is to have this edge match up to this gap right here. So you want the material to cover that. Clean out the bottom edges nice and tight. And then we'll check this to see if there's any fingers that need to be shrunk. Since the gasket is still on the inside, we don't want any fingers to pop up. So we'll mount it in place with about an inch from the bottom, squeegee across the top, come down the sides. This will push any fingers that we could possibly have to the middle. And we look good, there's nothing popping up, so we can mount it to be installed. So you don't even have to check it when you do it. I just checked for you. You do not have to pre-shrink this window. Go ahead and do our spray squeegee spray, making sure that we get water between the gasket and the glass in the front and across the bottom. Now we'll go ahead and grab the film from the outside. It is a long window, so you want to put your hand as far as you can when you pull the film off of the glass. And we're just going to line up the front bottom, get that into place, and then bring the back down. And you want to slide it into the front. You may need to use an easy reach to open that gasket up on the front edge for it to slide into place. Once the front's in, we'll work the bottom down. Make sure that rear gap is there and not overhanging. Checking all the edges. We look good. Once it's in place, you can go ahead and squeegee it. When it comes to this bottom, since the film is stuck between the gasket and the glass, you could get a little water bubble like this, so you could just take the easy reach, open that up, and the water will drain out. Same thing with the front gasket. And then we'll go ahead and squeegee the rest of this out with a final press. Overlapping strokes. And then across the bottom edge. And then before we go and push out the bottom edge for the final push, we'll go across the top and the back edge with the blue hawk towel and the gray lid coat card with the heat gun. Check the outside, check the edges, make sure everything's laying down nicely. And then while I'm heating from the outside, I like to take the easy reach and go on the inside and push down the front edge and then go across the bottom to make sure that bottom edge is laid down nicely. And then since this is a frameless window and you're going to have to untrick the door when you deliver it to the customer, I'd recommend, just like I say in any other frameless door window vehicle specific video, to heat the outside for at least 5 minutes across the bottom, just to make sure it's tacked up really nice and all the water's evaporated from between the film and the gasket and between the film and the glass on that bottom edge. If you do get any fingers popping up, you can use the gray lid coat to give those a final hard press. You can even use it in replacement of the easy reach. So this window looks good. We'll move on to the rear quarter glass window, and then we'll move on to the back window, which I'm going to pre-cut just like any other back window. It's very simple. If you're doing this with bulk material, you lay a 20-inch roll down, because you can use a 20-inch, cut around the edge, and then shrink it like I'm going to show you in the next step. But let's do the quarter glass window first. Spray it up, lay the material out. Again, this is 5%. Spray the outside so we can mount it. And I like to line that straight edge up to the bottom of this dot matrix here. So one less edge we have to cut since we already have a straight edge. We'll mount that in place. And we'll make sure we have a fresh blade so we don't score the glass. You can either use glass aid or make sure you have a fresh blade. And it's going to be hard for you guys to see, but I'm going to cut right to the edge of this dot matrix here. Just like you would cut out a back window. And it's a good idea to have the passenger side door open, or vice versa. If you're cutting this on the passenger side, have the driver's door open, so you have light coming through that area to make it easier to see. And we should be able to use this piece on the other side. Let's lay that out quick. Line up the bottom edge. Make sure we have full coverage. Mount it in place. And I'll cut this out after I do the back window. We'll go ahead and install this quarter window. I will peel this off and move it down just so you guys can see the process from the inside, so it's not covering the full window. Mount it down here. If you were doing this yourself, you could leave that in place. So what we're going to do is a spray squeegee spray from the inside, starting from the back corner, wrapping up across the top and down the front, and then the remaining of the window, making sure you wipe the blade between each wipe, or between each squeegee press. Soapy water again. And to pick these, to peel the liner when a film is laying on the glass like this, you can use your fingernail and it'll actually release the liner just by hitting your finger on it. Grab the corner, bring it inside. You could easily do this from the outside, looking from the outside, laying that into place. And then always check from the inside to make sure there's no light gaps. Now we look good. Now when it's a cold day like it is right now over here, I like to heat this from the outside first, just to get it warm on the tint side of the glass, so that once I do that first initial squeegee, it'll mount it in place so it doesn't move while I'm squeegeeing the rest. Yep, it did move. Since it is moving around on us a little bit, I like to hold it in place if it does that and get that first tack. And once you have that first tack down, you can squeegee out the rest of the window very easily. And these quarter glasses are super simple. That's it, really. Let's move on to the back window. All right, so we have the pre-cut rear window. I'm gonna lay that in place. Since it is pre-cut, it doesn't really matter the placement. You just get it as close as possible. Use our felt squeegee block since we have the sticker, even though I always use the felt squeegee to shrink the back windows. Mount that H pattern, and then we'll go ahead with shrinking it. You can see with the sticker there, it doesn't really interfere the shrinking process since we are using a felt squeegee. If you're using a hard card, it would not go well because the hard card would grab onto the actual sticker. And this is a very simple rear window to shrink. Nothing complicated at all. Just when you cut out the window to the exact size, make sure you pay close attention to this area here, because you don't want to have a light gap where the brake light is. It's just a little triangle section. All right, before we go to the inside prep of the rear window, I'm going to spray the perimeter and squeegee it out just so when I peel the liner off of the back window, it doesn't cause any debris to drop into the tint. If you're reverse rolling it, you would do this as well, but if you're laying the tint on the door and installing it with that method, then this would be irrelevant to you. Okay, for this rear window, it is a little tight where the headrests are, so you could choose to either do this with the seats down, which it does work. It just makes it harder because it raises the seat up by about 8 inches, I'd say, and it makes it a lot tighter in here. So if you're a bigger guy, it will make it harder. But for this, I'm just going to show you how to remove the brake light, and I'm going to work around the headrest. So to remove the brake light, you're going to pull down on both sides of this plastic here, and then you're going to pull down about 7 inches in, and there's a clip there as well. That'll release the area, and then you pull down in the center. Don't pull down too hard in this plastic, because then it'll release from the carpet on the sides or the headliner, and you won't be able to really get that back in easily. And then once we release this, we're going to pull down on the brake light itself. And it's kind of hard to explain this without showing you guys, and the camera most definitely is not going to fit back there. But the whole idea here is to get the brake light as far down as possible, and then it'll fall out of place. And then you're going to unplug it. And you'll see here, there's 2 little holes in the actual roof of the car that these pop into, and then it pops into place. So the whole idea is to pull it down so that these release. And when you put it back in, you might have to fit your head back there just to line it up with those 2 holes. Put it in horizontally or vertically, and then move it up into place. And then these clips will hold it into place. You'll see when you do it. It's a lot simpler than it is explaining it. But once you have that out, you can pop this back into place, so you have more room to work with. And with this back window, just like any other Dodge rear window, the defroster lines are very thick. So typically you'd want to use a 00 steel wool pad with soapy water on the window and scrub it up and scrub the lines very good, because if you do miss a spot, then you will have blistering in that area. Unfortunately, I only have a white non-score pad, which will do just as good, but I just have to put a lot more pressure on. But steel wool is optimal because it really cleans that edge of the, or cleans the surface of the defroster lines and helps the tint stick a lot easier. So let's scrub this up. Now the more you scrub that up, the easier it'll be, because the last thing you want is the tint to blister up on those defroster lines, because it takes forever to get it down. So after you scrub it, wipe it down with the blue hot towel, just like any other rear window. Then we'll do our spray squeegee spray and grab the material from the outside. Take our 5.5 inch across the top. Make sure you hit that little cutout for the brake light. You can release the seats when you're squeegeeing to make it easier. Then you're going to hit the very bottom with the side swiper. Let's grab the material from the outside. Spray it up really nice. Remember, the hotter it is, the more water you're going to want to use, or the more soap in your solution you're going to want to use, so that it doesn't tack up too quick. Grab this. Frankenstein method. And if you're doing this with the seats up, you want to get over the headrest first without hitting them. Lay that into place. You want to get one corner down in first. So we'll get the rear driver's side down first. And then we'll work our way across the bottom with the other side. This is a tight back window to do. At the bottom of this window there's a rubber gasket, so you want to make sure you get the film between the film and this gasket as evenly as possible. And then after we get it into place, we'll go outside and check it to make sure there's no light gap across the bottom. Before we check it, we'll spray it and to smooth out any of these air pockets that we have. The reason we spray it is so our hand glides on it very nicely and doesn't catch any of the pockets and cause a crease. Let's go outside and check this out. So we look like we have even coverage across the bottom. Let's quickly go inside and squeegee this out before it gets too dry. Overlapping strokes across the top. Right now, when you do the bottom edge, you're going to want to get as close to the gasket. Not all Challengers have this rubber gasket on the bottom. I've actually never seen this before. It might just be on a specific year. But when you get close to that, you want to be careful. Make sure that the tint isn't sticking, and you want to move slow, making sure that you push the gasket away as you squeegee it, and it'll lay down very nicely. Then we can go across the bottom edge with the side swiper to make sure we got all the water out between the film and the glass there. And then we'll push out the edges with the gray lid coat card and the towel. Wrap up the card, push out the top. And now here's the moment of truth. After you squeegee it out, you're gonna wanna go from the outside, wipe that dryer sheet off, and make sure that there's no blistering happening on the defroster lines. Now, main tip with this car is do not turn the rear defrosters on once it's done. Typically that's a good idea because it causes the glass to get warm, but these defrosters are so thick that if you turn the defrosters on, it might cause blistering to happen. So you want the film to naturally set. You don't want the rear defrosters on any Dodge vehicle with the back window until the film is dry. So after 2 days, you can use the rear defrosters. Looks like we're lucky. That white score pad did a pretty good job. The only thing I see here is along the dots where that gasket is, need some extra pushing out. I'll actually use the yellow contour to get behind there. You can see check it from the outside while I do this. All right, so to put the brake light back in, you're gonna wanna pop this panel back down, the headliner. The first thing you wanna do is plug the brake light back in. And it's pretty high up there, so you're probably not gonna be able to see this. But just check the position, plug it in, very simple. And we're gonna line this up with the 2 holes. You guys aren't gonna be able to see, but I'm gonna take a picture for you guys so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. So just line it up with those 2 holes. I'll show the picture on the video. And once you get those 2 holes lined up and it's plugged back in, you can pop it back into place. And then pop this plastic back on it. And that'll set everything back into place. And you just want to go over it and wipe it down, make sure everything's nice and dry. All right, guys, now that is how you tint a 2017 Dodge Challenger. Of course, the last step would be untricking the latch. I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to let this sit for a bit while I tint the other side of the vehicle. But that is how you tint a 2017 Dodge Challenger. I'll see you guys in the next video.